and welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to business confidence. Now, my guest this week is the amazing Lisa Michaels. I first came across Lisa during the pandemic when she was delivering brilliant online courses. And these brilliant online courses happen to be all about putting together brilliant online courses. So I knew straight away that she walked the talk, if you like. Now, I talk a lot about harnessing creativity through content, but I don't think there's a better example of this than Lisa. She's been building up a huge range of courses, products, and hugely useful materials for clients for many years. And she's got an amazing hinterland too, as you'll find out in this interview, with a huge variety of interests. She's not only a genius at accelerated learning techniques, but along the way, she's also found time to be a priestess and owned a highly successful ballet school. It's difficult to summarise Lisa up in a simple intro, so let's let her do the talking. I promise that you'll be blown away by her. Let's start with the little matter of running a ballet school.
So my first really, I would say, good-sized business was that I owned and ran a 500 pupil ballet school. So started off by buying it from somebody I was actually teaching for. And I think we started with maybe 160 pupils and built it up. And at the same time, I also developed curriculum for dance teachers. So I sold that as well, really a little bit internationally, not a ton. But I was on the cover of Dance Teacher Now 3 times. I had CDs for dance teachers. I had syllabi for them. So in addition to running the school, I was also running this training the teacher program and had a lot of success with that and loved it. And that just was the foundation of my experience. And it was a very physical experience, I'm going to say. We worked with bodies and shapes, and it wasn't internet time, so it was all hands on. It was a big building, it was a beautiful setting, and I had lots of teachers working for me, so it was a lot of fun.
So a few context questions there. I mean, firstly, where was it? In terms of which part of the world, and but also it's not a normal thing. We're starting the story about you bought a ballet school. How did that come about? I mean, people don't just like walk up to you in a pub or a bar and say, "Would you like to buy a ballet school?" I mean, how did it all come about? Were you a ballet dancer yourself?
Were you? Oh, of course, I had to be. Absolutely, you can't train ballet if you haven't done it. So of course, I was a dancer for many years, and I actually studied ballet pedagogy in college. And my school was in Duluth, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. I was a dancer for many, 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 many years.
Okay,
and loved entrepreneurship.
Okay, so it's an unusual combination because you
were. It's true. It is actually.
So you were doing that, and what was it? Something you saw that you saw the way the school was being run, and from your dancing, in terms of a dancing background, but you also sort of were developing a business background. Were you already a businesswoman at that time as well? Or?
So what's interesting is my grandmother was an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur for a little while. So I just didn't really think very much about it. I just kind of I sort of had it in my blood. But years before that, I'd opened a school in Southern California and had it for just a couple of years before my grandmother died. And I decided I needed to move back to Georgia to be closer to my family again, because that's where I'm originally from. So the studio owner knew that I kind of had a background in running my own school. I'd also run a ballet company before that, or as part of that whole thing. So she knew I had the skills to run things. So she was moving and kind of knew my background. She knew me as a teacher because I taught for her for a while. And she asked me to buy the school, and I just kind of fell into it. And the interesting thing is, it was really a big success from the very beginning. Like, she'd established a foundation, and that's kind of nice, actually, because when you're starting totally from scratch, you have to build everything, which I've done later in different businesses. But it was a nice foundation, and just continue to build on it and grow it, and just had a lot of success in that business. both
Okay.
aspects, the teacher training and the ballet school.
Was this a single ballet school then, or were there sort of like other ballet bits, springing up in other towns, or was it all centered around one particular sort of central location?
It was just really one location,
Right.
multiple classrooms and many teachers, but one general location.
Right. Having done that, and it's interesting what you're saying about your background, is that being an entrepreneur had been in the blood
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. So you were probably just thinking this is the natural order of things, and this is the way our family works. Perhaps maybe
Honestly,
it
I
didn't.
didn't think about it at all, Trevor.
Yeah. Okay.
I just did it.
You thought there's a ballet school that needs buying, and there I am, and there I've done it. And what is success for a ballet school? I mean, what is it? Is it the quality of the teaching? Is it, it must have different yardsticks to, many kind of more conventional businesses.
Well, certainly the quality of the teaching has to be there. And there's a lot of not very good dance studios. I mean, and not a, so it's a big deal when you have a really strong school. But I also had kind of another strange thing. A lot of dance schools, they run their performances like this loosey-goosey thing where it takes hours and hours. The parents are there like forever. And I was like, no, we're running this thing like clockwork. They come in, they have to be there for 5 minutes. Their kid goes on stage, they do their thing, they're off and they're out of there in like 20 minutes. So, I mean, literally 5 performances, 700 people in the audience, and they came in, they did their thing, and they left. And the performances were short enough. I mean, we've moved a lot of people. I had a business partner at the time. We moved a lot of people through the programs, through the performances, and because it was also not only strong training, but it was incredibly well run, that was part of the success model. I mean, we honored the parents' time. We didn't just like expect them to just give up their lives for their children to be in dance.
It's an incredibly important point, isn't it? Because, if you think about who are the customers, if you like, of this thing,
Yes,
it's not just the
yes,
kids, it's the parents there, and the parents are
right.
there, but they're, and I've been in many a situation myself as a parent where you are, despite of your love for your child, you are kind of looking at your watch thinking, well, we really need to be getting on now,
Exactly, exactly.
so let's talk about, so this was earlier sort of in your career. I mean, so what made you, I mean, I suppose you could have just done this forever, could you? But was there a particular thing that made you want to sort of, sell up on the ballet school and move on, or tell us about the next stage, what happened next?
Well, actually, leaving the ballet school is really one of the hardest things I've ever done because I loved it so, so, so much. But I knew it was time for my next level of development. And I've been kind of on the side studying personal development for many years, like many, many years. And so I knew that was part of what was going to be next for me. So I sold my portion of the school and moved into starting to develop personal development workshops. And trainings. And that's what I really did next for like 20 something years. Really, you could really say longer than that now. But that's and developing content for that and really integrating pieces that I have learned and things that I've developed myself through all of that, So over those years, I've developed tons of programs, helped thousands of people, really written books, developed an oracle. Like I have all kind of products in that arena as well. So that's been a really powerful transition. But of course, you always miss the little girls in tutus and the dancing. I mean, I still do miss it, but I can't go back, but I miss it. I loved that environment. I
Yeah,
love what I do now too, but
yeah,
I
and we're
feel
gonna
really blessed.
and we're gonna get onto that in some depth in a minute. I've got to ask you though, when I was reading up about you though, that it also says, I mean, reading your bio is amazing because it also said that you became a priestess at some point. I mean, I'm not quite sure where that fits in the chronology. I mean, maybe we'll deal with that and then get back to the business stuff. I'm just fascinated, and sorry, I just want to know how that fitted in and whether it's still happening or what's going on.
Well, it's really kind of an interesting story because, as I said, I'd been studying personal development and I also studied a lot of women's spirituality. So I was running the ballet school and this program came along and it was a priestess process. And I read the woman's book and I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm gonna go see what it's about. And one of my ballet students says, Miss Lisa, I hear you're going to become a priestess. I said, I'm not going to be a priestess. I'm just going to go to this program. Honestly, Trevor, I didn't really even have a real clue what it was. But the very first weekend I went to the program, I was still at this ballet studio. I'm like, I love this. I mean, I just loved it. And I did become a priestess. I did become a high priestess. I did facilitate many people. I've lost track of how many. I've facilitated them becoming priestesses over the years. And really, what it is, and it's not any kind of religion of any kind or sort at all, it's really your own direct connection to the divine, however you name it. So you really just stand in. See, we're very used to in our culture looking to somebody else to be the conduit for your connection to the divine, however you want to name that. And this is just about accessing that yourself. So it develops intuition and really the capacity to support other people in a much more powerful way than I really ever thought possible. So it's instead of outer development, like the ballet is outer physical connection, this was very inward and
Mm.
activating an archetype that really started to inform who I was. And I mean, once you're a priestess or a high priestess, it's not like you can go back and take that away any more than you can take away that you were a dancer and that all those years of ballet training, or that you can take away that you've been an entrepreneur. I mean, you just are that after a point in time because it becomes part of who you are.
So this sense of connection, then that and obviously you're talking about it in a divine connection way. I mean, has that you talked about it also being inside, and obviously it's a hugely integral thing. Does that inside then radiate outwards then in terms of your business things? And I know you've done lots of things which we're coming to now, but has it sort of guided and informed your sort of almost like your value system about how you run your businesses and is it your operating system, I suppose?
Absolutely. I would really say that. And what's interesting too is when I was in the high priestess process, I was staying at a woman who'd been a spiritual teacher of mine. I was staying at her house. She was in California and I was back in Georgia at the time. And I was telling her, I said, I've been a ballet teacher for many, many years now, and I recognize and see patterns because that's part of the dance world. I said, but I have been studying all of these things that don't seem related to me at all. Like, I don't understand it. And the next morning, seriously, I woke up and I had this thing that I've never experienced before or since. It was like this swoosh of understanding that I had actually been studying the elemental forces of creation and how they function in your consciousness. And so I started working with the forces of nature and how they work with you, like earth and water and air and fire. And so that became really part of the operating system and part of what I really taught and part of what I really work with as an entrepreneur because, waters functions like your emotions. Like, how do you feel about what you're doing? How do you feel about the people you're working with? And air is like, the mental realm, but it's also what you work with, Trevor. It's word and communication and really getting your point across and knowing how to speak to the audience that you're targeting. So each of these elements, they function really powerfully when you're crafting anything or doing anything or creating anything in your business.
Okay, and that's a brilliant, brilliant answer. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it almost feels mundane now to ask a sort of question around tell me what sorts of businesses sort of post ballet school that you were setting up. You know, I know you've done a lot. You've done a lot just in the last few years that I've sort of known you. But take me through the sorts of things that you were doing and trying, and sort of successes and otherwise along that route.
Well, when I left the ballet school, what really surprised me was I had actually studied a lot. So I was actually offering a bunch of different programs. But what took off was the priestess process. Like people wanted to be trained as priestesses. I'm like, seriously? This is the biggest thing that people want. So that's what I did. And I eventually incorporated and I did a lot of training around this, what I really call elemental way of connecting your consciousness, like really developing your ability to be more in tune with what you're physically doing, emotionally doing, mentally doing, energetically doing, and spiritually doing. And so all of that just started to unfold. Like I didn't start off with some great plan. Well, I kind of did have a plan in the beginning, but let me just say that plan wasn't what unfolded. It kind of took on a life of its own. And so for 10 years, I developed workshops. I taught them in other people's homes. I later had a space that I taught in and just kept doing what was next and growing my ability to help people,
Yeah.
coaching them, teaching them. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I think you're not unique in this, but you are a very fine example of this, of somebody who's able to think at that higher level, if you like, and actually sort of thinks about what's some quite deep stuff, really, but also then be able to be practical as well about how do we do this, how do we package it up, what kinds of products and services are we offering around this, which is a very hard trick to for a lot of people to pull up, because sometimes people are either very practical but haven't really got any good ideas, or they've got loads of ideas but don't know what to do next. I mean,
It's true.
I mean, so the packaging things up and things like that, that was just part of was that something you naturally had, or just something you had to learn because maybe people were people staring at you and saying, well, I get all this stuff, Lisa, now, but what do I do next? And you thought, aha, well, I better come up with a product. Or were you already there with the product with a little bow on top saying, in fact, I've got it? Were you a natural at that, or did you have to learn that?
So number one, I wasn't natural at it. I mean, like it just happened. But also part of the reason that I have such a big body of work is that every time I finish something, people wanted to know what was next, like for years and years and years. So I just kept developing what was next till I had this like huge body of work. And I was like, okay. But I mean, that just is how it flowed. And I'd studied. So I was, number one, I was a ballet teacher. So I knew how to, frankly, start and end something on time, which not a lot of people know how to do. And I knew how to layer in content. Like when you're really a decent ballet teacher, you have to start at the bottom and then you train up, like you develop skills. So I had that. And then sort of toward the end of the ballet school, I started studying accelerated learning. I actually was in the Czech Republic studying accelerated learning for the first time and facilitated at the accelerated learning conference for a while and just did a lot of accelerated learning training. So I had some training in different areas, but the packaging and the coordinating of it and the putting it together is just something I have a natural skill set at and with. So I was really grateful for that. I can design a well-run program, either online or in person, very easily. And a lot of people struggle with that. So that's why, too, now I train people to do my work because they have the format and the formula and they have the training. And so they can just go deliver, which is a really powerful thing to have.
I think there's two things I'd like to sort of pick up on that, because I think it'd be really useful for our listeners in terms of, any struggle they may be having to sort of understand what they're doing. One thing you said is that, that it's difficult to find people who know how to start and end things on time. Okay. And do you personally, I mean, is that because it's something that came naturally to you? Do you find it frustrating when you come across people who just can't do that? Or do you sort of take a deep breath, have some patience, and that's something, a skill that you think, well, this is a skill I can teach them and I can help them get better? I mean, it must be when there's something you know how to do and you can see that they don't. Sometimes you can go one of two ways. What you can either teach them, or you can just get a bit gnarled up about it, and sort of be frustrated. I mean, which were you in? Were you sort of like thinking, I don't understand how they don't get it, or did you have something there for them?
First,
Yeah.
good question. Really good question. So first of all, I want to say, I think that came from years of dance training.
Okay.
Like when it is your turn to go out on the stage, you cannot go a minute before or a minute after. You have to go exactly on the beat that is your beat to go. And you have to get off the stage when it's time for you to get off the stage. So therefore, as a dance teacher, you start the class on time if you're any good, and you end the class on time, and you have to do all the pieces in between. Like you don't get to like stay, and the bar is the very first thing you do, working out at the bar. You don't get to like stay there the whole time. You have all these other things to get through. So that skill was kind of there. But I have been to so many workshops or trainings where 30 minutes after the darn thing is supposed to start, they're still like yakking it up. I'm like, get on with it. So I have to say, sometimes I'm patient, Trevor, sometimes I'm not. I cannot say it's a blanket way. And I have actually even taken an online accelerated training program where an hour and a half into a 2 hour program, the guy hasn't gotten to the content yet. He's still doing the intro thing. Don't have a lot of patience with that. I'm like, come on, you're a master trainer in this thing. Get on with the program. So a little bit of both.
Yeah, well, I'm very conscious that I should keep to time now in my questions.
Oh no, you're doing fine.
So the second bit, I said that there were two bits that I wanted to pick up on you with on what you just said, was that the whole thing around accelerated learning, and I went on a course which you were running, and the big revelation to me around that was the different pace and styles of presentations, and the way that you were introducing different sort of formats to break up the presentation to just keep it blooming interesting for the person at the other end of it, and which was a revelation to me, because I'd always imagined you go in and you have one sort of style, and and hopefully make the style as successful as possible, but you were sort of breaking things up, just keeping it interesting, keeping it flowing, lots of really interesting, and also a lot of kind of moments, focus moments, if you like, in what you were teaching us, around sort of keep coming back to whether this is something that the audience would actually want, and so on. So I mean, you're saying that you talked about the way that you sort of developed that, but again, I guess that must be something you still see when you are receiving information yourself, or you're going on your own. That are people, is the general standard higher now than it used to be, or are people still making the basic mistakes that you've been warning them against?
I think the standard is generally higher now. I think more people, especially when you're online, like if you just deliver content without engaging the people in some way, they don't necessarily, unless the content is fascinating, they don't always just like hang around to just like be talked at. They like to engage with whatever you're doing, and they come away with better results if they engage whatever it is that you're doing. So I do think the standard is probably higher now.
Yeah, and I must say to listeners, anyone who's listening, that if you want to find an excellent method in getting across your content and so on, I would recommend that they talk to you, Lisa. Really, I mean, it's
Oh,
because I was quite inspired by what I see. Let's get back to though, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey. As you've sort of grown and sort of developed in your sort of many sort of offerings, that you've been working on, do you have common faults, if you don't mind me asking that, in terms of what you do, in terms of we're not all perfect, and there must be things as an entrepreneur that you maybe get wrong more than once. Could you tell us a bit
oh
about those?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. I would say that probably the biggest fault I have is that I get bored. Like I can't do the same thing over and over 1 million times. But a business, if you're developing something that is going to be like your standard in your business, like you repeat it and you want to get in a really strong rhythm. The one thing that was really powerful about the ballet school is it had its own innate business rhythm. You start at the beginning of the year when the kids go back to school, you finish when they get out of school. Like it was very clear rhythm. And you take off at Christmas break, you take off for Thanksgiving, and then if you want to do a summer program, you can. But this is a strong rhythm. But when you're the business itself, it's easy to just like, oh, we're going to do it whenever I feel like it. I might want to start now. I'm not sure what the rhythm is. And then if you've done something like I said, I have a really large body of work and I could have just kept teaching that body of work over and over and over again, but I can't. I'm a creator and I get bored. So I have to go create the next thing. And that is not actually the best thing for a business, unless, of course, you're in already a really strong rhythmic environment like a dance studio is, where you can create within that container constantly. And that's part of the business model itself.
Why didn't you? I mean, I can understand through your courses and your body of work that, even if you personally are getting bored with, A, B, or C, you're at least inspiring others to do things. Why didn't you sort of adopt more of a sort of a kind of formal franchising kind of model whereby you were teaching people the Lisa Michaels way of doing this, that, or the other, and actually continuing to sort of derive revenue sort of from that? I mean, was that an option for you? I mean, have you tried that at all? Or?
Well, in the beginning, I've trained facilitators for years and years and years. And in the beginning, I did it, but I did it as a one-off training. So I didn't license them in the beginning. I do a combination of both now. In my early trainings, like they can go actually just teach certain things and there's no ongoing licensing fee. But when I'm training trainers to go do my training for trainers, they pay me a licensing fee.
Okay.
So it just took me a little while to realize the weaknesses in the model that I had created and to go back and fix that, which I did.
Okay, cool. And so that's one, if you like, something, a fault in terms of, I mean, I wouldn't even say being bored is a fault. I mean, it would, it's actually, I think, quite a good thing. I mean, one of the things I love about what I'm doing is I like the variety, and also it's up to
Right.
me. It's up to me whether I choose to have the variety or not. But I am always looking for the next thing. I think there's a sort of shiny object syndrome, I think, common
Uh-huh.
amongst a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, not so much a fault, but are there particular things that you find difficult about running a business? And maybe for the benefit of our listeners, that, I mean, for me, it's like the admin. I can't stand the admin. And are there particular functions or things you have to fit into your week, or you put off, which you shouldn't really put off, even though you must do it?
So really, I think that comes down to the exact same thing I was talking about. Like even with the ballet school, I got tired of, okay, let's create the schedule for this next year. Okay, like those kinds of like mundane sort of things. And there's a certain amount you can let other people do, and there's a certain amount you still just have to do yourself. Like you still gotta like figure out what's happening next. So yes, on the admin stuff, sometimes that just like, sometimes it's the financials, like, oh, please don't make me do another, like, look at the financial thing. So yes, on all of those things. And I have a tendency, the other issue I have is because I like creating programs a lot. I love creating my programs. So I'll create and I'll facilitate, which I love, but I'm not as like, oh, I love to do promotion. Like I'll do it, but it's not like what makes my heart sing. So I'll find myself sometimes actually focused more on delivery than getting in front of my next promotion.
Okay. Well, I think that's a common thing that I think a lot of people, and I think maybe our listeners will be encouraged to hear that even people, sort of have been successful as you have, sort of still have that challenge. Now, we want to give our listeners the confidence they need to succeed. I mean, having been through the journey that you've been through, I mean, is there a piece of advice you'd like to give to someone who maybe is not at that entrepreneurial stage, they might be working in another business and thinking about making that leap or something they've been toying with? Are there lessons that you've learned that might help others who are at that sort of crossroads moment?
There's something that I think is extraordinarily important, and I'm actually going to have to use ballet again as a reference for this. Because when you're a dancer and you're very first learning to do something, and let's say you're learning to go up and turn on one leg, okay? So you don't just start off by sloppily turning on one leg. You slowly learn how to put your leg out to the side, put it in the correct placement on your leg, and just stand on one leg, okay? Then you quarter turn, you quarter turn, you quarter turn. Then you half turn, then you do a whole turn. And you do that about 1,000,000 times before you fully turn. Now, what's that got to do with entrepreneurship? Everything. People come out of the gate as entrepreneurs and they think they should just be able to do it. They don't realize that it's a skill set and you actually have to practice. And sometimes you have to go slower than you think, and you practice that thing, and then you practice that thing, and then you practice that thing, and eventually you get really good at it. But if you think that you should magically be an entrepreneur, you're going to end up disappointed, you're going to end up frustrated, and you're going to quit way too early. So the most important thing is trust the process of growing your skill set as an entrepreneur, and repeatedly and consistently and ongoingly practice. There was a time when I was in the early days of facilitating workshops. Now, remember, I'd come from a 500 pupil ballet school, so I had lots of students, but I started in this new endeavor. I would teach if I had one pupil. I would teach just like I had a room full of people to that one person. And I taught one person for a little while before it grew into what it eventually grew into. But if I had quit because I only had one person, if I'd said, no, I'm waiting till I have 10 in my class or 5, no, I did it and I did it and I did it. And that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur and you're really getting going on your own. You have to just keep going and keep practicing.
Right. That's brilliant. Thank you. I mean, you've had many years of sort of experience in entrepreneurship. I mean, you talked yourself about boredom and, and thinking about what's coming next. What's coming next for you? I mean, it might be something our listeners are sort of interested in terms of, is there a particular goal that you have in the immediate future, something you're developing now that you'd like them to know about?
Well, I'm really concentrating right now on continuing to license the work that I've done over the years and putting it in a fresh format and training other people to be really skilled at growing their businesses, developing their businesses, and working with this content because it's really powerful and it provides really strong transformation for people. So that's my goal, is to get as many leaders out there being strong and successful in their own businesses. It's my time to help other people in a really, really powerful way.
I think it's that last sentence that stays with me the most. The focus for Lisa is so much about helping others. And oh my goodness, I suppose I love everything about her entrepreneurial journey, and I'm sure that you do too. So much so that I don't really know how to summarize it in just a few seconds. But if I had to, I think it would all be about the importance of starting and finishing projects on time, the blessing and curse that Lisa has of being easily bored, and why you must, as she says, practice and practice and practice your entrepreneurship. It's a learnable skill, just like everything else. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast or our business, Merri Media, you can find us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to join us for our next episode. Until then, thanks for listening.